Hello guys, thanks for watching this video, and what we're going to be doing today is learning some basic HTML and CSS. This is only a very brief introduction to web design, and it's primarily just for you to see if you want to do it or not. But it'll just teach you the very basics. It's not going to make you a genius in HTML. You're not suddenly be able to design incredibly good websites or anything, but it is just a start, because you have to start somewhere, right? So if you want to be able to design your own web pages, learn 2 programming languages. HTML isn't really a programming language, but that doesn't matter for the moment. Practice a lot on your own as well as learn through this video. Well, you will have to practice a lot on your own because this video is only less than an hour long, hopefully. You won't be able to learn solely because of that, so you will have to do a lot of practice on your own. And after that, you might want to learn some languages like JavaScript, PHP, Perl, scripting languages. If you fit that criteria, then it probably is for you. So these are just the 4 sections that we're going to go over. Just have a little look at that, but that's what we're going to cover. Basic HTML and basic CSS. Right, so in this section we're just going to cover what HTML and CSS are. We're going to pick an HTML editor. We'll go over basic structure, tags, how to link to a CSS document from an HTML document, and how to add text and headings. Okay, so HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and this means it turns text into graphics. And it's really just all the words, all the headers, everything like that. Take a look at this example. This is YouTube. I went onto the YouTube website and pressed inspect element, and you can see the code, you can view the code. I think I can't remember where I clicked, but this is just some HTML code. And it shows what HTML does really. It turns text into graphics. There'll be a lot more programming languages behind YouTube, of course. There's going to be loads and loads. But this just shows what HTML does. It turns text into graphics. Now CSS is solely used to style HTML. That's its only purpose really. And it stands for cascading style sheets. And you can do stuff like change the font family, colour, width, border, margin, padding. Don't worry if you don't know what any of them mean yet. We will cover them later. And it uses also very common sense language. So the first thing you need to do is pick an HTML editor. I've put 5 good ones on here: Dreamweaver, Coffee Cup, Komodo, Expression Web. That's Windows only because it's Microsoft. And also this one I found called Best Address. If you don't want to pay for one, I think most of these are paid. Dreamweaver is expensive. You could just use Notepad. That's fine. Here we've got the standard HTML document structure. I'll just go through this line by line. At the top here, the first line of code. By the way, I should just point out that all of these are going in between tags. Okay. Things have an opening tag. I'll just show you this quick. Right, everything has a tag around it generally. So content like hyperlinks and text and image links and headings, everything goes in between tags. And tags look like this. The things we see on here. These little things with the 2 arrows next to them. The greater than and less than sign. And every tag has a closing tag. So this tag here, it says P inside it. That stands for paragraph. So you have here the paragraph tag. Then you have all the text here. Right, then you have all the text, and then at the end you have a closing paragraph tag. Now, as you've noticed, on the closing one you have a slash and then P. So all closing tags have a slash. This is the basic document structure. At the start we have doctype HTML. What this does is it declares the document as an HTML document, so the browser knows what it is. This will be at the start of every HTML document. Then you've got in tags HTML, and then at the end you've got HTML. Now everything, all your code, will go in between them. Then you've got the head tags. and they start here, well, head and body. Now, stuff in between the head, stuff that goes in between the head is stuff like the title and the links to CSS documents, but not much goes in the head. The main content goes in the body, and the body is where you'll do nearly all your code. As you can see here, the paragraph text is in the body, and then a link to CSS, which is this line here, is going in the head and the title. Now, you'll need to know how to link to a CSS document from your HTML, because CSS is such an important part of web design. It's basically what all the design is. They need to be connected in some way, and you connect them by putting the line of code in the red box. At the moment, you won't really understand what it means. Leave the rel equals style sheet and type equals text of CSS alone. But this here, href, this line of code here, well, not this line of code, in the speech marks, right, this needs to be, I haven't circled it properly there, that is the location of the CSS document on your computer. That needs to be changed to where it's located on your computer. Anyway, let's first learn about the paragraph tag. So this is probably one of the most used tags in HTML, and it's very basic. All it does is put in standard size text and will output it onto the screen on your web page. So if you put in between the tags in the body, of course, that's where all the main content goes, in between the p tags and the closing one, of course, hello and welcome to my web page, outputted onto your website on standard size text in black will say hello and welcome to my web page. So you might want to have a little play around with that in your HTML editor, just writing stuff in between two p tags inside the body, and you can see what that does. There's also heading tags. Now there are 6 different types of heading tags. It goes from H1, H2, H3, H4, H5 and H6. If you write text in between the H1 tags, it will be really big. If you write text in between the H6 tags, it will be really small. And anything in between, it just goes in order, like H2 is the next biggest, then H3, then H4. H5 is small, and then H6 is the smallest. So your first challenge is just to make a quick HTML document in your editor. And if you're using Notepad, put .html at the end of the name. Add a main heading at the top and then add smaller headings and paragraphs below, just on any topic, any information. And by the end of it, you've made your first web page. So just open it up in your browser. That's section 1 covered. That's about a quarter of what we're going to do covered. Now, let's just go on to some CSS. Now, this is completely different, so we're going to have to learn a lot about this. But we'll do basic styling, basic syntax, basic structure. We're going to talk about why it's so easy, and then something else at the end. So you now know how to add headings and paragraphs, but what I want to do is style them. So to do this, we just use this programming language called cascading style sheets, which is solely used to style HTML documents. Earlier we looked at how to link to a CSS document from an HTML document. So now make a new CSS document, and if you're using Notepad, put .css at the end of it. And then you want to link this CSS to the HTML by using that line of code we looked at earlier. Now, you don't really need to worry about what it means, but you just need to put it in the head. So let's quickly go over basic syntax. It's different to HTML, you don't have tags to start. What you do is, it's kind of in, I like to think of it as in 3 parts. Part 1, say what you're styling. So if you want to style a paragraph, put P. If you want to style a header, put H, and then how big it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's step 1. So I'll cross that off. You've written P, or whatever you want to style. Then you have an opening curly bracket. And then you have a closing curly bracket at the end. And then in between these 2 curly brackets, you have your code. Your code that will be to style these paragraphs or whatever you're styling. Now, please just ignore that font. It's not font colour, it's literally just colour. So what you want to write now is, like, style something to be the colour red. What does this do, and why does it only affect the paragraph and not the headings? I'll give you a moment to think about it. 1, 2, 3. It will make the colour of the paragraph red. It will affect the paragraph and not the headings because we've put P before the curly bracket. Moving on to basic syntax 2. Just ignore the font in front of colour, that shouldn't be there because I'm stupid and I made this late at night. H1 before the curly bracket, as we said, part 1, then have a curly bracket, part 2, then your styling code, part 3, and then end the curly bracket, have a closing one, part 4. So let's just have a look at 3 lines of code here. We've changed the colour to red. And then at the end of the line, to say this line is ended, you have a semicolon. And then font family impact. Impact is just a standard font. It's not the best font, if I'm honest. It was just the first one I thought of. And then size will change the size. Okay. If size doesn't work, just put font size, because I'm getting font colour and font size mixed up. So what does this do? Well, this will change the colour of the H1 header to red. It will change the font family, that is just the font, the style of the font, to impact, and it will change the size to 30px. Now, if you look at your screen really closely, you might be able to see the individual pixels. Now, px means pixels, so it means that they're going to be 30 pixels. Okay, so let's just have a look at the basic CSS structure. So you write what element of the HTML you want to style. So in the example below, we're styling paragraphs. Then you add starting and closing curly brackets. Your styling goes in between the parentheses, and you add every line. You add a semicolon to the end of every line. We know that by now. So to style some basic paragraphs or headings, just write the following lines of code. Do you understand what each of these lines of code does? From looking at them, you can actually probably see what they are. I'll go through them anyway. But this is what I'm talking about with CSS. It uses very straightforward, common sense language. It's not really complicated stuff. You just need to remember, like, to change the colour of the font, write colour. To change the font family, you write font family. To change the height, you just type height. It's extremely simple. Do you understand what each of these lines code do? So let's just go through them. Colour at the top, that will just change the colour of the text to blue. Font family will change the font family. And the width, 300px, that's going to be the width of, like, every time you put a paragraph, it kind of makes a box around it. That's going to change the width of the box. Then the height of the box is going to be 100px, pixels. Then it's going to align the text to the centre of the box it's made around the paragraph, which it automatically kind of does. And then the margin, well, that's in 3 parts. The part 1 is say how big it is, so it's 5px. Then say whether it's solid, dashed, dotted, whatever, and then say the colour. And then, notice my mistake, deliberate mistake, trying to catch you out there. You have a semicolon. So we've talked about why CSS is easy, really. We've already talked about this, but you use very simple every day-to-day language. You know, if you want to change the colour of text, you just type colour. Most of it's the same. So whatever styling you want to do, you just type it, and then you type like the size of it or what colour or whatever. Like, try to guess how to change something to the background colour. You literally write background dash colour, colon, what colour, semicolon to end the line. Add this to CSS if you want to style a nice background. Final part of this section, we're just going to go over content, border, padding and margins. Right. Let's say here that this is a piece of text, just general paragraph text that we've used with the p tags in the body. Of course it has a width and a height. Now, the padding, as I said earlier, when you write a paragraph or a heading, it kind of makes a box around it. Now, this box is this, and the padding is the space in between the actual text and the box it's made around it. So this here, the arrows, is the padding, the space in between the actual text to the box it's made around it. Then you've got the border, which is kind of this little space here. Now the border is just a line that goes around it. So say this is a box, right? These lines here that I've drawn it, these are the borders. They're the line right on the edge. Like this here, on this little box I found off Google Images. This line here is the border of the box. We looked earlier, just one sec. So this shouldn't be margin, this should be border. Sorry. That should be border. Anyway. Yeah, that's what the border is. It's just the line on the very edge. And then the margin, well, the margin is the space around it. And this is how you move things around the screen. If you wanted to move, it's like use the margin left, margin right, margin up, and margin top and margin bottom. If you want to move something to the right, what you do is you make the margin left bigger. If you want to move something down, you make the margin up bigger. If you want to move something to the left, you make the margin right bigger. If you want to move something up, you make the margin bottom lower, up higher. So this box here, this general box, has got margin left 0px, so it's right on the edge. Well, if I make it 100px, it's gonna, this margin here, it's got a margin to the left of it, it's going to push it to the right, and then here it is. So that is how you move something around the screen. So moving something to the left, make the right margin bigger, etc. And the lines of code, if you write margin left auto, margin right auto, what it'll do is it'll align something to the centre. So what you should do now is just practice moving text and paragraphs and headings around the screen, now that you know how to move stuff around the screen. Remember, margin left, margin right, margin bottom and margin top. So the second challenge is to design your first web page using HTML and CSS. It should have a colourful and a nicely colourful and bold header at the top of the page. Well formatted paragraphs that have been moved to a nice position by editing the margins, and at least 20 lines of code, CSS code, styling to make it look good. But there is something you have to remember. I've said use 20 lines in this exercise because you need to practice using the different ones. However, in actual styling, the simple websites, I think, always look 1,000 times better. Never deliberately go over-styling with something, overstyle something. Too many effects can make a website just look terrible. In section 3, we're going to very basic stuff. Again, ignore IDs, that's wrong. Add images and hyperlinks in HTML and give classes to HTML elements so you can style a particular thing. So adding images is fairly simple. The line of code in this box shows how you add images in HTML. So it's just, unlike most tags where you have an opening and closing and you put stuff in between them, it's actually just one single tag to add an image. You open the tag and you put img. And then src is the actual image location. If you go onto Google Images, find an image and copy the URL and put it in speech marks after src equals, it will add that image to your web page. All of this is just optional to change the height and the width and give it a name and stuff. But this is a line of code just to add an image called smiley.gif, but you want to add here, you want to add like a website location of an image, a URL of an image. Or you can also add ones from your computer. Yeah, and then this line of code also gives it a name and gives it a height and width. But you could do that in CSS if you wanted. Just type in img opening curly bracket and then change the height and the width. But for now, I've just done that. Also, we want to add hyperlinks. You might not know what a hyperlink is. I'm sure you do, but if you don't, it's basically you click on it on your web page and it will direct the user to another site or another part of your own website. And adding hyperlinks is fairly simple. You just put opening tag ahref equals, and then in speech marks, the website location, so where you want it to when you click on it, where you want it to take the user. And then you close the tag, and then you put in after it what text you want to appear on the screen. You don't want all over your web page a load of URLs, blue URLs. You want it to say like visit Google, and when you click on visit Google it takes you to Google's website. So you put the text which you want to appear on your web page, and then you have closing A tags. Finally, classes. Let me just get rid of that little bit here. Now, one thing has probably crossed your mind now, and it's how to style one particular thing. Not one paragraph or one header, but if you want to style one particular thing on its own. What you do is you give it a class. Now, normally you just put P as a tag, then you put the text, and then you close it. But if you want to style just this one particular thing, you basically give it a name, and then in the CSS, instead of writing P, you write the name and then the opening curly bracket. So here we've given it a class of paragraph 1. So then in CSS we'll write paragraph 1, opening curly bracket, and it'll style the words hello on our web page. So this is the opening tag of the thing we want to style, and this is the right class. You give it a name. This here is just the normal text that will appear on the web page, and that's the normal closing tag. In CSS you do pretty much exactly the same, except from instead of just writing P, you write dot and then the name you've given it. So that's the class name again to the paragraph on the previous slide. You write dot paragraph 1, the styling code, curly bracket, closing. So challenge 3. Create another web page, a new one, and it should include individually styled paragraphs and headers, lots of images, and then also hyperlinks going to other web pages. If you can do that, you've got a very good grasp of what web design is all about, and you can actually just go off and practice. This final section is basic CSS styling recap. It's not really a recap because I'm going to be teaching you a lot of new ones, but this is just going to quickly go over some basic CSS styling. One thing you need to know is colour. Colour will just change the colour of the text. So you write colour, then colon, and then how many px, and then a semicolon. And then there's also background colour. Now what this will do is it'll change the background colour of something. So if you change the background colour of a paragraph, as we said before, it kind of makes a box around it. It'll change the background colour of the box. Then we've also got font size. Now this will change the size of the font, how big it is, whether it's 10px, 100px. Then there's font family, so this is like Impact, Verdana, Times New Roman, whatever. One thing you need to be aware of is certain browsers have certain different text fonts it accepts. So you need to be careful which ones you use. You don't want to use a really rare one. Then you've got margin left, margin right, margin bottom, and margin top. We said before that this is how you style something. Sorry, this is how you move something around the screen. Yeah, so if you make the margin left 100 px, it will move it 100 px to the right. That's just what we said earlier. So then you've got margin left. If you make that bigger, then if you make margin left bigger, it will move to the right. If you make margin top bigger, it will move it down. If you make margin left bigger, it will move it to the right. And if you make margin bottom bigger, it will move it up. And you've also got padding. Now, we did talk about what padding was on that section about content, border, margin, padding. But if you want to make the space in between the text and the border of the box that's made around it, just increase the padding. Then you've also got the border. Now, we said earlier this is in 3 parts. First, you want to say how big the border is. Then you want to say whether it's like solid, dashed, dotted, whatever style. And then finally you want to say what colour it is. And then you've also got text align, whether you want it to be aligned to the left of the box that's made behind it, the centre or the right. You've got width and height, it just changes the width or height of something, of the box that's made around it. And that is just basic CSS. And now we're just on next steps. Now, you can now pretty much build simple web pages, but there is a lot more to it than this. All I've done is show you how to add text, paragraphs, basic styling, images and hyperlinks. However, there is so much more to a web page than that, as you probably know. If you go on a web page and you just see some text and some images, you'd probably think it's a pretty bad web page. There's so much more. And there's so much more in HTML5, stuff like adding videos and audio clips and JavaScript applications, stuff like that. Now, I had a little look at where it might be good to go for next steps after this, once you finish this video in about a minute or so. But I'd just check out W3 Schools. They do HTML, CSS, and then if you want to go on to learn more stuff like JavaScript, PHP, Perl, they're a great site for learning more HTML. And also, if you want to go and learn a scripting language, you can go to W3 Schools. So yeah, that's a great place to go and learn it. And I'm sorry if this PowerPoint hasn't been great, but I've done my best. So, you know, comment, like, subscribe, whatever. Thanks for watching, and I wish you all the best in your web design from now.